This is me reacting to Mr. TARDIS Reviews, talking about Doctor Who Season 6B, The Ruth Doctor, and I guess a theory. I guess he's connecting the two. Of course I know what Series 6B is. Those who don't know, Series 6B, Season 6B, is the season between when the second Doctor was about to regenerate. Since we didn't see him fully turn into the third Doctor, there could have been a season in between that and Season 7 before he turned into the third Doctor, before we got to see that transformation. A lot of interesting things, like maybe perhaps two Doctors took place at a time. Wait, am I getting that wrong? Because they reference Victoria. I totally forgot. But Two Doctors doesn't take place in Season 6B, does it? Okay, I'm lost right now, but let's see what he has to say.
With the addition of the Ruth Doctor introduced in Series 12's A Fugitive of the Jadoon, fandom has been speculating as to just where the Ruthless Doctor fits in the timeline. This isn't like John Hurt's Doctor, the War Doctor, where there was a very clear gap in the Doctor's history for him to slot into. This is clearly a mystery that has yet to be revealed. Is she a past Doctor? Is she one of another 13 prior Doctors from another regeneration cycle? Is she from the future? Or is she the Rani in disguise? Because if there's one thing this fandom can't help whenever a mystery box character is introduced, is ask, is it the Rani? However, one theory that has gained a lot of traction is the Season 6B theory, and this video is going to outline just what the theory is, its history, and whether or not this lines up with what we know about the Ruthless Doctor already, and just how likely it is that showrunner Chris Chibnall and his creative team are going to run with it. So, when we talk about Season 6B, we are not talking about the Moffat Series 6 Part 2, broadcast in 2011. No, we are talking about the original classic series run, which ran for 26 seasons between 1963 and 1989. Season 6 was broadcast between August 1968 and June 1969. It starred Patrick Troughton as the second Doctor, along with companions Jamie and Zoe, played by Fraser Hines and Wendy Padbury respectively. The 44-episode run is comprised of 7 stories, which saw the second Doctor face villains such as the Crotons, the Dominators, saw the return of icons like the Ice Warriors and the Cybermen, and ends with the epic 10-part story, The War Games, written by the late great Terrence Dicks.
I already just explained this in the beginning. I'm gonna skip some of this.
The story ends with the Doctor being put on trial for breaking their laws of non-interference. The Doctor's interference is able to fight.
All these evils I have fought, while you have done nothing but observe.
Great regeneration.
True, I am guilty of interference, just as you are guilty of failing to use your great powers to help those in need.
The Time Lords recognise this, but still decide to punish the Doctor by taking away Jamie and Zoe and wiping their memories.
Yeah, we know this.
TARDIS wiped from his mind, and he's forced to change his appearance. The last time we see the second Doctor on screen is him in the best-looking void that a 1969 BBC budget can afford, and then in the next story, Spearhead from Space, we see the Doctor falling out of the TARDIS in Oxley Woods on Earth as the third Doctor, played by John Pertwee. So, if that's how Season 6 ends and Season 7 begins, what's Season 6B? Well, between 1963 and 1969, for the show's first 6 seasons, there would only be a short gap between seasons because of how the production was run, normally averaging between 6 to 7 weeks off the air every year. This meant that Polystyle Publications, the license holders for Doctor Who comic books in the 1960s and the 1970s, before losing the rights to Marvel Comics, would easily be able to keep up with...
Imagine a 20-minute Doctor Who episode no less than every 7 weeks. What kind of world do we live in now? I saw some of the production dates, like by the 5th Doctor era, some episodes would air back to back, like episodes 1 and episode 2 of it. I think the show Enlightenment aired back to back, or was it King's Demons, or something like that.
This was also helped by the gap between William Hartnell's last story, The 10th Planet, and Patrick Troughton's first story, Power of the Daleks, being just 1 week. It was part of the same season, so comic books could easily swap over the lead actors. However, between the War Games and Spearhead from Space, seasons 6 and 7, Doctor Who would be off air for 6 months. That was the longest time the show had been off air at that point. This meant the comics did not have a new Doctor, despite wanting to publish more stories. Now, John Pertwee had been announced as
he was announced
by this time. In fact, he was officially confirmed to be Troughton's successor a mere 4 days before his
same month,
appearance in the War Games Part 10. But instead of setting the second Doctor comic stories before the events of the War Games, Polystyle Publications decided to set these comics after the serial, where the Doctor has been exiled to Earth by his own people, but he is awaiting his regeneration. During this time, the second Doctor would have 5 more stories over the course of 21 issues, where the second Doctor starts living as a celebrity socialite in the Calgren Grange Hotel in London, utilising its switchboard to respond to calls and alien activity. This short run would come to an end in November 1969 in the 3-part story The Night Walkers, where the Doctor, as a game show panelist on Explain My Mystery, okay, that was a thing, the Doctor would assist callers who would ring up asking for explanations to supernatural events. A farmer named Glenlock Hogan rings up the show asking the Doctor to explain why his scarecrows have started moving around on their own at night. Perplexed, the Doctor goes to visit the farm to witness the scarecrows for himself, only to discover that the scarecrows were sent by the Time Lords to enforce the rest of his sentence. The scarecrows trap the Doctor with an energy weapon and carry him away, back to his TARDIS, where the Doctor says his final words: "Fear no more, Hogan. After this dreadful night has passed, your scarecrows will not walk again." The scarecrows then set his TARDIS to land somewhere on Earth, and that's when we meet the third Doctor at the beginning of Spearhead from Space on TV about 5 weeks later. The comic strip would go on hiatus for nearly 2 months and pick up again with the third Doctor working at Unit, business as usual. And this is kind of the origins of the Season 6B theory. Well,
that's really cool. Putting a second Doctor in a modern London setting, and the comic was in color at the time. I would have ate that shit up if I was growing up then.
Metamorphosis between the second Doctor and the third Doctor, there is the possibility that the second Doctor did have more adventures off screen without companions between the War Games and Spearhead from Space, and these comic strips are a potential outline of what could have happened to the character. However, these comic strips were quickly forgotten, and without the internet around back then, and also just general comic book disposability, these were just meant to be read once and then thrown away. Fans couldn't really speculate or discuss what happened off screen between serials, and these obscure comics just faded from memory. However, the War Games was not the last on-screen appearance of Patrick Troughton as the second Doctor. He appeared 3 years later for the 10th anniversary
this could have been Series
Doctors,
6B,
in the 20th anniversary special,
I remember that theory.
Doctors, and a random Season 21 story, The Two Doctors, alongside Colin Baker's 6th Doctor. The latter story would become a source of contention within the fandom for just where in the second Doctor's timeline it could have taken place.
I was
the
confused.
second Doctor and an aged Jamie are working for hire by the Time Lords, despite their first meeting of them definitely being in the War Games, and Jamie having his memory wiped at the end of that story. Also, we have the Three Doctors, which has the second Doctor also doing work for the Time Lords, and along with that, one of the illusions the Doctor encounters in the Five Doctors is an image of Zoe and Jamie.
He could have had so many adventures until he regenerated,
but how would the second Doctor know that if immediately after their memory loss he's forced to regenerate? And then in Spearhead from Space, the third Doctor has items of jewellery
from the Five
Doctor
Doctors.
just never had in his possession, as well as a watch that hones in on the TARDIS. In the Two Doctors, the second Doctor even has a remote control to his TARDIS, something which was gifted to him by the Time Lords. The Sixth Doctor, despite being a future version of himself, says that he always wanted one of those. Figure that one out. The Doctor also says they've left companion Victoria somewhere.
That's why I was confused. I was correct. They mentioned Victoria.
Would place this story between the Tomb of the Cybermen and Fury from the Deep in Season 5 when Victoria was a
How does that explain the grey hair? Whatever.
So that means the Doctor and Jamie hadn't even met Zoe yet, let alone met the Time Lords and had their memories wiped. So just when on Earth does this story take place? Now, if you think these discrepancies were just a combination of plot devices...
Wait, what?
...alone met the... So that means the Doctor and Jamie hadn't even met Zoe yet, let alone met the Time Lords and had their memories wiped. So just when on Earth does this story take place?
They haven't met Zoe yet, and Jamie hadn't met the Time Lord until War Games. So, the show didn't pay attention to the continuity or something.
Now, if you think these discrepancies were just a combination of plot devices, contrived writing to allow for anniversary specials, and also just the human aspect of aging, you are clearly not a true Doctor Who fan, as this must point to additional Second Doctor stories, and that's exactly what fans and writers Paul Cornell, Martin Day and Keith Topping thought, authors of Doctor Who, The Discontinuity Guide,
I never heard of this. It looks like it was written by... a foreword by Terrence Dicks. Terrence Dicks has to be my favorite Doctor Who writer for sure. I never heard of The Discontinuity Guide.
Book, which chronicles the classic series, pointing out any plot holes and errors over the course of the show. Noticing these gaps in the canon for the Second Doctor, Cornell, Day and Topping brought up the idea of a Season 6B, taking place
that's where it
Games of Spearhead from Space, where the Doctor was doing missions and tasks for the Time Lords. 4 years later, this Season 6B theory was further canonized into the extended universe with the 6th Doctor novel Players, written by Terrence Dicks. These Time Lords were part of the CIA, the Celestial Intervention Agency. After a couple of adventures with the Second Doctor on his own, the Time Lords decided that the Doctor just worked better with companions and allowed him to pick up Jamie, and they altered his memory, which explains his inclusion in the Two Doctors, as well as his acknowledgement of Victoria, and after a while the Time Lords officially enforced the Doctor's sentence and changed his appearance with a new regeneration, and also wiped his memory of this period, explaining why the 6th Doctor did not know about the TARDIS remote. This canon actually became officially endorsed by the BBC, who not only included excerpts from the Discontinuity Guide on their website, but dedicated an entire page to the Season 6B theory. I'll put a link in the description to where you can read the full detailed explanation on the official BBC website.
Remote was earned in Mark of the Rani. I guess I overlooked that bit of dialogue when I watched it.
After Terrence Dicks wrote Players in October 2005, 2 months before David Tennant would make his on-screen debut as the 10th Doctor, Terrence Dicks penned another novel called World Game, which not only introduces where the Doctor got his psychic paper from, an item which became a staple of the 9th Doctor's debut series that same year, but explains in detail what happened at the end of the War Games. The blurb of the book reads as follows. The Doctor has been captured and put on trial by his own people, accused of their greatest crime, interfering with the affairs of other peoples and planets. He is sentenced to exile on Earth. That much is history. But now the truth can be told. The Doctor does not go straight into exile. First, the Time Lords have a task for him. From the trenches of the Great War to the terrors of the French Revolution, the Doctor finds himself on a mission he does not want, with a companion he does not like, his life threatened at every turn. Will the Doctor survive to serve his sentence, or will this adventure prove to be his Waterloo? This World Game novel also leads directly into the events of the Two Doctors, and even explains why the Doctor's TARDIS during the Troughton era and the one he uses in the Two Doctors are different. During his time working with the CIA, the Time Lords lent him a Type 97 TARDIS with a working chameleon circuit, even though his TARDIS is still a police box in the Two Doctors. See, discrepancies like this happen because the fandom just saw the slightest gap in the series and decided to do what fans do, and populate it with more of what they love. And that's what Season 6B is. Headcanon, which some fans really let get away from them.
It got away from me, yeah.
To the point where additional media has taken steps to try and incorporate this theory. Even Big Finish has gotten involved, trying to explain the gap between Season 6 and Season 7, though their events directly do contradict World Games and, I've gone cross-eyed. Though I do love how this fan theory went full circle, with Terrence Dicks being the co-writer for the War Games before using his expanded universe novels to elaborate on the Season 6.
He wrote both these stories. Okay, Terrence Dicks, okay.
So why have fans latched onto this theory for the new Ruthless Doctor? Well, we have a Doctor which our current incarnation does not remember, doing missions for the Time Lords in a redesigned TARDIS, so maybe the idea is that the Doctor did work for the Time Lords as the second Doctor, then tried to escape with a new regeneration and disguised herself with the Chameleon Arch. Maybe Lee, implied to have Time Lord training, might have helped the Doctor to escape. So, do I believe that Ruth ties into the Season 6B theory? Well, no. Why is that? Folks, I've just spent almost 15 minutes explaining the basis of this theory. I do not think that this is a welcoming story arc for anyone outside of the most hardcore fan. Not to mention, Series 11 spent an entire series trying to be standalone and welcoming to the casual viewer, and making the big mystery of Series 12 revolve around a decades-old fan theory that is relegated to the expanded material, but only maybe, is a bit of a dumb approach. The War Doctor fit in well because the Time War was an established part of the Doctor's character for nearly a decade, but a Season 6B Doctor? That's a cut that might be way too deep. Also, going...
And how would she not remember?
...series had deliberately created. Having Ruth be the Season 6B Doctor would not only be forcing an on-screen gap, but also erasing prior Second Doctor material. I think this element of...
Today I'm reacting to John Pertwee Wrote a Doctor Who story. I did not know this. Let's jump right in.
In 1970, the
By Josh Snares.
Doctor Who production office received a curious script submission. This wasn't unusual for Doctor Who, but the author surprised them. This 24-page document was submitted by none
Looks like he put the production code JJJ.
other than John.
Why did TV shows have production codes back then? How did that make it easier to identify them?
The Doctor himself. Why did he want to write for the show?
It's a nice picture.
Why wasn't it made? And was it any good? Today, we're going to discuss the unmade story, The Spare Part People. A story filled with underground cities, mad scientists, and mummies. This is John Pertwee's vision for Doctor Who. John Pertwee, just after finishing filming the final scenes for Season 7's finale, Inferno, decided to take a crack at writing for the series. Pertwee was still relatively new to the role, but he'd already thrown himself into shaping the show's direction, with a new emphasis on gadgets and action scenes. He sat down with Reed de Ruin, a writer/actor, and developed a storyline to pitch to the production office. Doctor Who fans will recognise Reed from the 1966 story, The Gunfighters, where he played Pa Clanton. Their pitch document outlined a 7-part serial titled Doctor Who and the Spare Part People, or as an alternate title, The Brain Drain. By this point, Caroline John, who played companion Liz Shaw, had departed from the show, so the outline only contains the Doctor and the Brigadier, with no signs of upcoming companion Jo Grant. Following the Season 7 format, the serial was spread over 7 episodes.
Oh, cool.
The story starts in a quiet village near Cambridge, where reports of the world's greatest minds are being kidnapped. The Doctor and the Brigadier investigate. The Doctor discovers that Dr. John Madden was next to be kidnapped, so he disguises himself as Madden. The disguise works as towering, eerie mummies, 7-foot-tall creatures wrapped in burial shrouds, take the Doctor. The Brigadier tries to fight back, but is quickly overpowered. With the Brigadier and the Doctor captured, they find themselves aboard a massive Jules Verne-style submarine, where the missing geniuses have been captured. They are bound for a hidden city beneath the Arctic ice. Here, they encounter an advanced society ruled by King Julius and Queen Flong. The scientists abducted from around the world were being forced into an experiment. They were being fed into a vast supercomputer. Their intelligence and physical attributes combined to create perfect individuals. Meanwhile, those who resisted were thrown into a monstrous labyrinth, hunted by a mechanical beast with razor-sharp metallic teeth. As the Doctor and the Brigadier uncovered the truth, they found themselves at the mercy of King Julius, who saw the Doctor as the key to unlocking the final mystery, immortality. The Doctor was deemed the ultimate spare part to create an eternal ruler for this frozen empire. Julius
kind of like Modern Undead a little bit, but this is obviously years and years before.
Doctor to be fed into the supercomputer, merging his Time Lord DNA with the machine itself, therefore creating the perfect person. The Doctor orchestrated a rebellion. The abducted scientists,
I could just imagine the cliffhangers for
by
this.
the Brigadier, fought back against the towering mummies and the city's robotic enforcers. Meanwhile, the Doctor managed to override the supercomputer's programming, causing chaos within the city. With one last explosive charge, the labyrinth was destroyed, sealing the fate of the lost city forever. Despite its grand vision, the spare part people was never made. Pertwee said in an interview with SFX magazine, "We gave it to Terrence Dix and he said, very nice indeed, very exciting. I said, are you going to do it? And he said, no, it's completely wrong in its construction." Pertwee and DeRuin had written the story like a film script, fast-paced, cinematic, and epic in scale. Unfortunately, as script editor Terrence Dix pointed out, Doctor Who required a different kind of storytelling. A slow pace, more scenes where characters are talking rather than high action and expensive set pieces. Their script, although thrilling, simply didn't fit the format of the show. Years later, Pertwee even attempted to revive the idea as a comic strip in 1994 after seeing Colin Baker write for The Age of Chaos. Pertwee reached out to Doctor Who magazine for an adaptation, yet when he went to locate his copy of the script, he couldn't find it. He also considered writing a novel adaptation of the story, but unfortunately, that also did not happen. When I first read the synopsis of this story outlined in Doctor Who magazine, Invasions of Earth, I knew after the first episode this would be next to impossible to pull off on Doctor Who's meagre BBC budget. But it's interesting to see elements of the story find its way into future Doctor Who stories. An ancient lost city feels reminiscent of Atlantis in The Time Monster, and the characters they meet along the way. Even the theme of critiquing unethical scientific experiments, which is also seen throughout the Pertwee era, such as The Line of Evil. Robotic mummies appear in Pyramids of Mars, and mummies also appear in Mummy on the Orient Express. I find it strange to blend Egyptian-style mummies in an ice city, but it could have made for a really striking visual. Even the
70s Doctor Who mummy before Tom Baker's
when I
mummies
first
were
heard the
built
title,
up.
I thought it would be a Cyberman story. I love the ambition and faith of BBC that
because it sounds like spare parts.
Being able to pull off a story like this, something with such a high concept. For me, personally, I think the story is overly complicated with far too many characters, and trying to simplify it for this video was a real challenge. So I've left out some details. I wonder why John Pertwee decided to write for the show so early on in his career in the show. Maybe it was just some early enthusiasm. Maybe writing a story so wide in scale was a reaction to the Earth-based stories. And you can just imagine like a modern-day Doctor like David Tennant, Jodie Whittaker, Peter Capaldi. I wonder what their take on the show would be if they wrote a script. And I also wonder, like, if the script actually worked. Did Terrence Dix actually think it was alright, or was he just being polite? I'm not entirely sure if this is the type of Doctor Who that I'm personally drawn to, but the idea of a Doctor writing for the show is really interesting and unusual. He isn't the only Doctor who attempted to write for the show, with William Hartnell pitching the idea of a story with the son of Doctor Who, and he would have also wanted to have played the son of Doctor Who. It would have been absolutely insane. And I also mentioned earlier that Colin Baker wrote a Doctor Who comic, so yeah. But who knows?
I didn't know that about him. I'm watching stubagful reviewing The Mind Robber. I've seen this video before, but it's been a while. Mind Robber, like I said in my previous video, that was my first Doctor Who story, and it set a very high standard. It was my favorite for a while. And yeah.
The show is aware of the fact it's a work of fiction that relies on narrative conventions that it's been adhering to for decades. The Mind Robber isn't totally unique in Doctor Who history. Many episodes have been trippy and psychedelic, but it's probably one of the strongest entries in the micro-genre of Doctor Who episodes that attempt to make the show into a cosmic, trippy piece of surrealism. An episode that allows it so fans can say, "No, shut up, Mom, it's actually an incredibly artistic show." It doesn't just repeat the same formulas over and over again, just a white void where nothing exists.
Great opening.
But there's something not quite right about the void. It feels as if there's something out there. The Doctor insists that no paralleled, and that atmosphere is derived from the fact it doesn't explain itself. The sinister presence called...
Yeah. So it's like he's talking about the atmosphere. I was watching a video created by Cinemassacre, James Rolfe. He was talking about why he loves sci-fi movies, and he pointed out something interesting. There's basically three main types of sci-fi films: alien invasion, like a monster on the loose, or a science experiment type thing gone wrong. Those are the three main types of sci-fi plots. So what he's saying, like, formulaically, yeah, interesting to think about.
Out to Jamie and Zoe to leave the TARDIS is unseen, and they just sort of find themselves following this unseen hand guiding them to leave the TARDIS and enter this unknown dimension.
Maybe that subconsciously is one of the aspects as just a guy in a room that kind of makes it lose its magic over the years. I don't mind it. Yeah.
About the real people behind these works that capture your imagination.
Oh, this in color would go
so H.P. Lovecraft.
Like Androids of Tara comes to mind as an example. That story takes itself seriously. could it have been written in a land of fiction? It actually very much could have, you know, new world, new civilization of people, new fighting opportunities, the Doctor with K9 and Romana.
That's any more complicated than just some monsters are attacking everybody for some reason. Rawr. Basically, some wibbly-wobbly jelly monster thing is attacking random people and the Doctor's car, and doctors also describe it in similarly vague terms.
Yes, but what was after you?
Well, some kind of powerful organism thing with a very strong hunting instinct.
Some kind of powerful organism thing probably never did well as a piece of Doctor Who merchandise. Tell you what I want to see you bring back in the new series, Russell. Some kind of powerful organism thing. I know this is supposed to be an untouchable classic here, but I just felt my brain melting into goo while watching The Three Doctors. When the show got revived in 2005, it came under criticism for being more of a fantasy show than a sci-fi show because of its focus on human drama, and its gibberish techno-babble didn't exactly mean much when you broke it down. It was very much just a case of let's point a screwdriver at a thing and say some nonsense words. But if you watch back episodes like The Three Doctors, you will find similar levels of meaningless gibberish. Doctor Who was never exactly a hard sci-fi show. A stable alien planet inside of a black hole. And if in real life you
That's an
like
interesting
this
criticism.
thing, you probably wouldn't find
that it could lack depth in like teaching the audience more science. Maybe you don't think about that much. Yeah.
planet containing a ranty alien in a weird mask. You'd probably just, you know, die. The most realistic bit in The Three Doctors was this trippy sequence in episode 3, where the Doctor fights Omega in this black void metaphysical headspace thing. And guess what? There's no sound in it, because they're meant to be in space, and sound can't travel in a vacuum.
This is cool. I love that scene. I'd rather watch a scene like this over like a Hollywood movie like Rocky or like Raging Bull or something like that. I'd rather watch this, yeah.
Shut up, Star Wars. There's no sound in space. This movie is a lie. So you just basically the old show, and it's not an intellectually stimulating experience, and it's really not meant to be. The new show just translated these basic elements into a modern context by giving its characters more realistic reactions to fantastical situations. Well, like a normal person would. No, what he does is he writes scientific equations in the dirt and calmly and methodically tries to get liminal space on the monitor, which actually works quite well for the first Doctor. He always had this air of an omniscient, godlike figure, and having him as this rarely seen, controlling presence stays true to the mystique of his character. Hartnell is definitely the element of The Three Doctors that holds up the best. It's also quite funny that the Doctor's TARDIS monitor is in colour, but the Time Lords, a race of supposedly super powerful beings, can only manage black and white. As much as I've been making for do telepathic contact, where they talk in their minds, so they don't have to bother explaining everything that's going on to each other. And they probably should have done that more often, so they could hide just how much gibberish gets spat back and forth between the characters throughout the runtime. Anyway, so they defeat Omega by making a bomb thing out of a recorder, sellotape to a piece of plastic. And that turns his domain into a supernova, and then he's...